If you buy a state-of-the-art $1 million Formula One racing engine, you don't just strap it to a wooden horse-drawn carriage and expect to win a race.
Right, that would be completely ridiculous.
Exactly, because the sheer torque would just snap the chassis in half the second you hit the
Oh,
gas.
for sure.
The suspension would shatter, the wheels would fly off. I mean, you can't just bolt next generation power onto legacy architecture. You really have to build an entirely new vehicle from the ground up, one that's specifically designed to handle that much power.
Yeah, it's literally a fundamental law of engineering. The power source ultimately dictates the design of the machine itself.
And yet, when we look at the modern business landscape right now, strapping a rocket to a wooden carriage is basically exactly what most companies are trying to do with artificial intelligence.
It really is.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into a truly just an eye-opening source today. It's an article called Architecting the Future: Organizational Design in the AI Era by Jonathan H. Westover, PhD.
It's a fantastic piece.
It is, and our mission for this deep dive is to explore why simply handing your employees a bunch of AI tools is, well, it's essentially a recipe for organizational disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to look at how companies must fundamentally rewire their structures, their leadership, and their talent models just to survive this new era.
Because it's a complete structural transformation. I mean,
Mhm.
we are talking about rewriting the genetic code of the company itself here.
Right.
It's not just, pushing a software update to the IT department.
Exactly. So for you listening right now, whether you are a manager trying to reorganize a team or maybe a professional who is, secretly worried about the trajectory of your own career.
Which is a lot of people right now.
Oh, totally. Or even if you're just fiercely curious about the future of work, this deep dive is going to serve as a mental shortcut for you. We are looking at the mechanics behind the biggest shift in business since the commercial internet. Okay, let's unpack this, because there's a statistic in this article that just sets the stage perfectly. Currently, about 65% of large organizations have piloted AI technologies.
Right. Everyone is playing with it, testing the waters.
Everyone. But a mere 15 to 20% have actually restructured their organizations to accommodate it.
Wow.
I mean, that is a massive operational gap.
It is. And what's fascinating here is that we have to look at the core difference driving this desperate need for redesign, which really comes down to what automation used to be versus what it is today.
Right.
Because previous waves of automation, like the Industrial Revolution or even the early information age, they handled routine, rules-based tasks.
Like clerical work, manual labor, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Basic calculations. Those systems required human direction and intervention at every single step.
They were just tools.
Right. But today's generative AI, what the source categorizes as agentic systems, they operate on a completely different paradigm.
Oh, totally different.
They can pursue goals with substantial autonomy. You give them an objective, and they actually break it down into subtasks. They select their own digital tools, execute the steps, and they adapt their strategies based on the feedback they receive along the way.
It's just wild. It's the difference between a power tool and an autonomous actor. To put it in perspective for you, it's like past automation was like giving a lumberjack a chainsaw instead of an axe.
Okay. Yeah.
The chainsaw makes the lumberjack exponentially faster, but the human is still the one, aiming the blade and doing the actual work.
Right, they're in control.
Exactly. But agentic AI is like hiring a robotic lumberjack that also maps the forest, decides which specific trees to cut based on market demand, and then executes the harvest completely on its own.
That lumberjack analogy perfectly illustrates the paradigm shift here.
Mm.
Because when you realize that the AI is acting as a semi-autonomous agent capable of completing entire complex workflows, you suddenly realize that the traditional corporate org chart is just entirely broken.
It's obsolete.
Completely. Those old hierarchical containers, the rigid job descriptions, the siloed departmental boundaries, they all rest on this fundamental assumption that human labor is the primary input for productivity.
Right. And when human labor is no longer the primary input, that entire structure just collapses under its own weight.
Exactly.
So how is this impacting the people currently holding those axes? Because if the AI is increasingly making the decisions and mapping the forest, what happens to the human workforce? We hear a lot about job replacement, but the source digs really heavily into the psychological and structural impacts on the people who actually stay.
Yeah, the structural consequences are profound.
Yeah.
It's leading to a phenomenon the source highlights called job polarization.
Okay, so job polarization, we're talking about the hollowing out of the middle, correct?
Exactly. We are seeing an increased demand for highly specialized, high-skill roles.
Right.
Jobs that require advanced strategic judgment, deep creative framing, and really complex interpersonal skills. But simultaneously, there is a massive rapid reduction in mid-skill roles. Yeah, the jobs involving routine information processing, basic data analysis, or even initial drafting, they're just evaporating from the market.
But wait, if AI is doing all the junior level grunt work, like parsing the massive spreadsheets, writing the boilerplate first drafts, doing the baseline research, how does a new employee ever get the reps in to become a senior leader?
That is the million-dollar question.
I mean, if I'm a junior software developer, I learn what bad code looks like by writing it and fixing it. If the AI writes the code, we're effectively just cutting the bottom rungs off the career ladder. That sounds like a massive pipeline crisis for future leadership.
It is a critical bottleneck. There's no denying that.
Yeah.
But beyond the pipeline issue, we also have to look at the psychological toll on the professionals whose jobs aren't necessarily eliminated, but they're fundamentally altered.
Right. The day-to-day changes completely.
Exactly. The article gives a very telling example regarding the medical field, specifically radiologists.
Oh, right. Because we all know AI is currently beating human radiologists at basic pattern recognition in medical imaging.
It is.
But the source points out a hidden side effect here that goes way beyond just diagnostic accuracy.
Yeah, the technology is undeniably incredible at spotting anomalies in scans, right? And efficiency improved dramatically when these tools were introduced.
Sure, you'd expect that.
But the research showed that some of these highly trained doctors experienced a severe drop in professional satisfaction.
Wow.
Think about it from their perspective for a second. They spent over a decade in rigorous medical training to be the ultimate medical detective, solving complex human puzzles.
But with the AI doing the heavy lifting, their professional identity is basically shattered.
Exactly.
I mean, they went from being this brilliant detective finding the needle in the haystack to essentially just, proofreading a machine's homework.
That's exactly it.
Ah,
They shifted from being a primary diagnostician to an AI output verifier.
that sounds miserable.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, organizations aren't just managing a technology shift. They are managing an identity crisis for their workforce. People derive a massive amount of intrinsic motivation from the actual process of doing their work, not just the final output. When you take the process away, you damage the motivation.
So if bolting AI onto an existing human workflow just leads to broken career ladders and depressed doctors, what is the alternative? Because the source argues that companies have to completely flip their design philosophy to an AI-first model.
Right, so the legacy approach is a human-first AI augmentation model.
Yeah.
You look at what the human employee does and you try to find a software tool to make them a little faster.
Right.
Reversing the automation logic means going AI first.
Okay.
You start by looking at the desired business outcome and identifying what the AI can accomplish entirely on its own.
Entirely on its own.
Yes, and only then do you determine where human intelligence needs to be inserted to add essential value.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but I have to push back hard on this concept on behalf of the listener.
Go for it.
Because, wait, AI first sounds genuinely terrifying. If I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, great, I'm just the backup generator now.
Right.
Right.
Because the source uses JP Morgan Chase as the shining beacon of this AI-first approach. They used AI for initial legal contract analysis and saved something like 360,000 hours of review time annually.
Which is a staggering number.
It is. But let's be real for a second. When a massive global bank saves 360,000 hours of labor, they usually don't just let those junior lawyers sit around doing high-value strategy. They fire half the department.
That is the fear, yeah.
So in the real world, doesn't an AI-first mandate just serve as corporate cover for aggressive headcount reduction? Doesn't starting with the machine fundamentally diminish the human role?
Well, it is the most common and, frankly, justified fear across the workforce right now.
Yeah.
But when we look at the mechanics of the JP Morgan case and others like it in the research, a successful AI-first approach actually elevates and concentrates human work rather than just eliminating it for cost savings.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that, because saving 360,000 hours definitely implies a lot of empty desks. It implies a massive shift in capacity, certainly. So AI takes over the baseline execution, the high-volume processing, and the mind-numbing pattern recognition within those legal contracts.
Right, the boring stuff.
Exactly. But the legal challenges the bank faces don't shrink, they actually grow more complex. By removing the bottleneck of document review, the human attorneys were redeployed to handle things machines are notoriously terrible at,
Like what?
like navigating regulatory ambiguity, handling complex edge case exceptions that the AI flags but can't resolve, integrating legal knowledge with broader business strategy, and, perhaps most importantly, building trusted relationships with clients and regulators.
Oh, I see. So the human roles are completely redesigned around our comparative advantages. The
Yes,
AI does the reading, and the humans do the actual lawyering. We
precisely.
become more human, essentially, because the robotic parts of our jobs are finally given to actual robots.
Exactly. The roles become intensely focused on judgment and connection. But achieving that redesign brings up a massive structural hurdle.
Right, because if we're redesigning jobs so humans only handle complex exceptions, that completely changes who we hire and how we build teams.
It changes everything.
Which brings up a logistical nightmare. Who is actually in charge of hiring the AI?
Right.
Because traditionally, the IT department buys the software licenses and human resources hires the people. But if spinning up an AI agent is now a direct, equivalent alternative to hiring a human employee, you are forcing a choice between a silicon worker and a carbon worker.
That is precisely the convergence the source outlines. The traditional siloed walls between information technology and human resources must be entirely dismantled.
Wow, that just sounds like a reality show waiting to happen.
It really does.
Because historically, HR and IT are entirely different corporate subcultures. You have the empathy-driven talent acquisition folks trying to map out 20-year career paths, and you have the data-driven systems architects who just want to know if the server load can handle a new API. Forcing those two departments to share a budget and make unified workforce decisions feels like a recipe for absolute bureaucratic chaos. How are companies actually pulling this off?
Well, it absolutely creates friction, but it is structurally necessary. Decisions about technological capacity versus human capacity now require integrated, simultaneous analysis.
Okay.
You have to evaluate costs, deployment timelines, and strategic implications holistically. Look at how Moderna handled this.
What did they do?
They didn't just tell HR and IT to collaborate. They structurally integrated their leadership. They created unified oversight for both technological and human capability development.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the executives managing the server infrastructure and the executives managing the payroll are essentially operating as a single workforce planning unit.
Guess that's the only way to avoid competing against your own internal departments.
Exactly. And the source also mentions Unilever tackling this convergence, specifically in how they redesign the recruitment process itself.
Right, because hiring humans using AI is a whole other minefield.
Oh, absolutely. But Unilever is a fascinating case study in integrated talent technology design. They didn't just take their old hiring steps and automate them. They completely redesigned the candidate experience.
Okay.
They utilize AI for the massive top-of-funnel volume, the initial candidate screening, parsing thousands of applications, matching core competencies.
But how do you prevent that from just becoming some dystopian, faceless algorithm rejecting people?
Right, that's the danger. But they prevent it by understanding the mechanics of where human touch is critical. They deliberately design the system to pause the automation at critical decision stages.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, so once a candidate reaches a certain point, say assessing cultural add, evaluating emotional intelligence, or final offer negotiations, the system mandates a human connection point.
So it forces a human back into the loop.
Exactly. It requires intense collaboration between the tech teams building the AI parameters and the talent teams who understand the nuance of human empathy in hiring.
And this convergence isn't just happening internally either. The article details how this bleeds out into how companies manage their external partner ecosystems too.
Yeah.
Procter & Gamble is the primary example here, specifically regarding how they deal with external creative and advertising agencies.
Right, because the traditional advertising model is deeply rooted in paying for labor time. A company like P&G would pay an agency based on the billable hours it takes human designers and copywriters to create 50 different individual ad variations for a campaign.
Which takes forever.
It does. But generative AI can spin up endless variations of content instantly. So paying for human hours to execute variations makes zero economic sense anymore.
So how are they actually scoping and pricing those partnerships now?
P&G fundamentally shifted their compensation model. Instead of paying for labor time, they now pay a premium for strategic frameworks.
Yeah.
They pay the agency for the core creative concept, the deep psychological insight or the soul of the campaign. Then, They pay a licensing or orchestration fee for the agency's AI to instantly generate all the specific regional and channel variations based on that core framework.
So they are basically paying for the architectural blueprint, not the bricklaying.
Exactly.
But wait, if we are blending internal employees, external strategic frameworks, and autonomous AI agents all into one massive workflow, how do we even measure who is doing a good job?
That is a huge problem.
I mean, traditional business metrics like revenue per employee are completely useless now. If a company cuts human headcount but spins up 10,000 AI agents, their revenue per human employee looks artificially incredible, but it doesn't reflect the actual cost of doing business.
It becomes a fundamentally misleading metric. As organizations deploy AI at scale, traditional performance frameworks just collapse.
So what's the alternative?
The source introduces a necessary paradigm shift. Organizations must move from measuring human productivity to measuring total intelligence cost.
Total intelligence cost. Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that. So we're aggregating human payroll, AI development costs, server space, API calls, all of it.
Yes, you are measuring the comprehensive cost of the intelligence required to achieve a specific business outcome, regardless of whether that intelligence is generated by a biological brain or a silicon processor.
Right.
You look at a solved customer problem and ask, what was the total blended cost of the human and artificial capital deployed to fix this?
So it's no longer, how much did this employee cost versus how much they made us? It's how much did solving this problem cost using a mix of human and artificial brain power.
Exactly.
But here's the massive challenge with that, as I see it. If we are judging humans and AI on the exact same total intelligence cost metric, the AI has a staggeringly unfair advantage.
No, without a doubt.
The AI gets smarter automatically with every overnight software update. It learns instantly across the entire network. How on earth does a human employee keep up with that pace of learning velocity?
Well, that is the critical tension. It's why companies like Salesforce have developed entirely new performance dashboards. They don't just track calls per hour anymore.
Oh, they track?
They track the handoffs. They measure customer satisfaction across interactions handled purely by AI versus those handled by humans.
Oh, that's clever.
And crucially, they track escalation metrics. Where does the AI reach its cognitive limit and have to tap out and ask a human for help?
Right.
They are evaluating how these different forms of intelligence combine and where the human provides the irreplaceable value.
So the new metric for human value essentially becomes your ability to solve the complex problems the AI couldn't figure out.
Exactly.
Which means the humans have to constantly level up their own cognitive abilities.
Yes. This is the upskilling imperative. Because AI is changing the actual content of our daily work so aggressively, organizations are basically forced to invest in systematic capability development. The source refers to it as systematic unlearning and relearning.
Systematic unlearning and relearning. But you can't just mandate learning without addressing the fear of replacement, though.
No, you can't.
I mean, you can build all the training modules you want, but if your employees are terrified they are just training their robotic replacements, they aren't going to engage.
Right. The companies succeeding here are making massive structural investments in their people. Walmart is actually a prime example here.
Walmart.
Yeah. As they deploy AI aggressively across their retail and supply chain operations,
Yeah.
they aren't leaving their workforce to figure it out in isolation. They have built dedicated technology academies for structured training.
Wow.
They offer extensive tuition support. And most importantly, they have explicitly mapped out internal career pathways, linking these new skills to concrete advancement.
So they are actively rebuilding the career ladder that the AI threatened to break.
Exactly. Teaching their workforce how to act as managers and orchestrators of AI rather than competitors to it.
This raises an important question, though. How do leaders manage the intense anxiety of this transition? Because if executives are hiding in a boardroom whispering about AI deployments and headcount models, the employees are going to assume the absolute worst.
They always do. The source emphasizes that the human and political dimensions of this organizational redesign are just as critical as the technology itself. Leaders must cultivate profound psychological safety and practice radical transparency.
But what does radical transparency actually look like in practice here? Because companies hate sharing plans before they're finalized.
Right. Well, it means holding a town hall and openly sharing information about strategic intentions and expected workforce impacts, even when the final details are still uncertain.
That sounds uncomfortable.
It is. It means a CEO standing up and admitting, hey, we don't know exactly what our headcount will look like in 3 years, but here is how we are going to involve you in designing the transition.
Giving people some agency.
Exactly. It means employees must feel safe pointing out when an AI tool is failing, or admitting they are struggling to adapt to a new workflow without any fear of punitive action or termination. If you impose an AI-first structure from the top down in a culture of secrecy, you will breed active resistance and sabotage.
People will just reject it completely.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so what does this all mean? Let's bring this all together. If we look at the entire landscape we've just mapped out based on this research, we are moving from seeing AI as just a high-powered software tool to recognizing it as a semi-autonomous actor in the workplace.
Right.
And that realization forces an AI-first redesign of workflows, which completely shatters old silos, forcing HR and IT to essentially merge their strategic planning.
Absolutely.
It requires abandoning old productivity metrics for total intelligence cost, and it demands massive continuous investments in human upskilling, backed by transparent, empathetic leadership.
It is nothing short of an architectural revolution for the modern enterprise.
It really is. So for you listening right now, the takeaway is highly personal and immediate. The most valuable skills you can cultivate today aren't necessarily coding or basic prompt engineering.
No, the AI will soon be better at those than any human.
Exactly. The most bulletproof skills are the uniquely human attributes this source identified. Your ability to navigate deep ambiguity, your capacity for creative problem framing, your emotional intelligence, and your ability to build trusted, nuanced relationships. So look at your own day-to-day workplace and ask yourself a hard question. Are you just using an AI tool to do your old tasks a little faster, or are you actually redesigning your workflow and your skill set around it?
That's the real test.
Yeah.
And as you consider your own workflow redesign, consider one final broader implication from this research to really ponder.
What's that?
If organizational structures become entirely fluid, right? If teams are just temporary combinations of humans and machines forming and dissolving based on project needs,
Right.
and if the majority of day-to-day execution is eventually handled by autonomous AI agents, what actually happens to corporate culture?
Oh, wow.
Is culture still created by the humans sharing experiences around the water cooler? Or does the culture of a company eventually become the underlying personality, the biases, and the ethical programming of the AI systems running the operations?
That is deep. Are we shaping the AI's culture, or is the architecture we are building eventually going to shape ours? That is a phenomenal question to chew on as we navigate this transition. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the future. We will catch you next time as we continue to explore the ideas shaping our world.